Phones, phones, phones. It seems in recent days I've been phone crazy, and I very much have. I'm sure the folks on Instagram, where I've been posting lots of related pictures recently, are getting quite sick of it. But I can't help it, it's just the way I am. Ever since I started my new job and I've been up close and personal with Northern Telecom business phones, I've just become so interested in learning how they work and what makes them tick and the kind of things they can do. And by the way, if what I just said about a new job is news to you, then you're not subscribed to my second channel, The Maritime Man 2, which is where I post update videos now. But yes, I started a new job this summer. I work for one of the large Canadian telecom companies doing some engineering work. And in the office where I work, we have a lot of Nortel business phones still in service, all sorts of different types, and I've just become really interested in them. It all started when I tried to get a Meridian telephone working in my cubicle, and it wouldn't work, and I didn't know why. And I did some Googling, and it turns out it's because it's a digital PBX phone. And digital PBX phones won't work on a regular analog POTS line, which is what I have running into my cubicle. Some other people have digital lines going into their cubicle, but mine's just standard POTS service. So I can't use a PBX phone in my cubicle. PBX stands for Private Branch Extension. And that basically means you have a network, very much like an internal network of computers. You can have an internal network of phones where a phone in that network can call another phone in that network without having to access an outside line. So it's very much just like a computer network. You have all the internal phones on the internal network, and then you have the PBX, which is the big controller that all the phones are connected to, which interfaces with the outside line, much like a router with a computer network. But anyway, yes, once I found out why the phone I tried to get working in my cubicle wouldn't work, and I started reading about how they work, I thought it was really cool. And then you couple this with the fact that I'm really attracted to the design of the phones and, just the really clean layout of them and the nice features they have. I've sort of fallen in love with them, really. So as a result of this newfound interest of mine, I've actually been seriously wondering and doing some research regarding if I could potentially, from a cost and from a complication standpoint, purchase my own Northern Telecom Meridian PBX and a couple of phones, just my own little small system to actually learn this stuff hands-on and experiment with it and play with it, and I suppose ultimately interface it with my own home telephone line. Well, not mine, not in my apartment, because I don't have a telephone line running in here, but as an example, Mom does. Mom has a POTS line running to her house, and it'd be cool to see if I managed to get my own PBX and a phone or two to hook up to it, if I could actually get them to work and interface with the outside line. This was also compounded by seeing retrochad's video, which I linked to in the description of this video, which I'm showing right here, the video where I showed the Meridian M5316 phone, and I'll link it again in this video if you haven't seen it and you want to watch it. But in retrochad's video, he got a hold of a Norstar PBX and a bunch of phones and just showed in the video the PBX with two phones connected to it, and he managed to get it working without much complication at all. And the PBX he had is quite small in size, and it seemed really awesome. It's like, man, I want to get a hold of something like that to play around with. That'd be totally cool. So without much hope, because I had no idea how easy or how expensive it would be to acquire a system like this, I did some research, did some looking on eBay, did some research to see, what was out there in terms of the different types of Nortel PBXs. I only care about Nortel stuff. I don't care about anyone else's systems. And I didn't have much hope because I figured it might be really expensive or really hard to acquire. Well, to much of my surprise, neither of those things are true. They're not pocket change cheap, and eBay's not flooded with the things, but it looks like it is possible, at least on a Christmas budget, that I could actually buy my own Northern Telecom PBX and a couple of phones to actually play around with. So I've been reading up on this stuff and looking at other stuff and, just seeing what all it would entail to get something like this going once I actually acquired the equipment. So I thought in this video I would just explain my findings thus far, because there are no videos on YouTube explaining any of this stuff. The closest you can get is retrochad's video, and other than that, just some people make short videos, people who actually work for a company as their phone administrator, where they just explain things like how to configure some setting on a Nortel PBX and stuff like that. So I thought I'd make this video just to show if you know practically nothing about business telephone systems like I do, or at least I know more now than most people already, but still very little since I've never touched it hands-on. But what it might entail if you wanted to try something like this out for yourself, as I hopefully plan to do in the near future. One of the fundamental things you'll learn when researching this stuff is Northern Telecom actually made 2 lines of business telephones. Both were ultimately under the Meridian name, but the phones themselves went under different names. One line was the Meridian 1 series of phones that look like this. The Meridian 1 system, and both of these systems were developed at around the same time. It was around, I know the Meridian 1 came out in 1988. The other system was around that time. I don't know if it was before or after or around the same time. But one of the systems was the Meridian 1, which was meant for medium or large size businesses. I think the smallest Meridian 1 system you'll find is capable of taking like a couple of hundred phones and accessing up to like 30 or 60 outside lines. And the largest Meridian 1 system can handle, I think, 30,000 lines and God knows how many phones, tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands or something like that. They get insanely huge. When you get that big, the PBXs are the size of a gymnasium. It's basically a whole central office, except it's just for this business rather than serving a town of residences. But anyway, yeah, that's the Meridian 1 system, and the phones look similar to this. The other system was developed for home office and small business use, and that was called the Meridian Norstar system. And the phones look like this. Rather than having the hinged display, they have an integrated display. They're about the same size. This model I have in this picture here is a bit simpler than the Meridian 1 phone, but Norstar phones were made that had just as many buttons, and there were even larger Norstar phones made as well. So yeah, the Norstar was a smaller system, but about as well featured, really. A small Norstar system could be as little as a few phones and 1 or 2 outside lines. The largest Norstar system might be a few dozen phones and maybe like 8 or 16 outside lines. Well, I originally didn't pay much attention to the Norstar system. I only paid attention to the Meridian 1 system because at work, these are what we have, the Meridian 1 phones. And we don't have any Norstar phones. We don't have a Norstar system at work. And this was just what I've had experience with, so this is what I was most interested in. Well, it turns out that, first of all, this particular phone that I filmed the video of is not a Meridian 1 phone. It looks and functions just like one, but it's not. The M5316, is actually a Centrex phone. Centrex works similarly to a PBX system, except instead of the business having a PBX in it, basically all the functionality of the PBX and the internal phone network is handled by a telephone company. So if you're a business and you want an internal telephone network, but you don't want to bother wiring up, buying the equipment and buying the PBX and wiring up your building to the PBX, all you have to do is buy Centrex phones, and the telephone company, you already have telephone lines running to the telephone company. The telephone company just has to set up your lines to its own PBX, basically. And that's called Centrex service. So it's basically handled by the telephone company instead of locally. This particular phone and the ones like it at work, in all the conference rooms, these are actually Centrex phones. Now it's kind of funny because I'm working for the telephone company, so I don't know if the Centrex is still administered locally in the building or it's actually probably from one of our central offices. But yeah, these are a Centrex phone. These will, as far as I know, this particular phone will not work on a Meridian 1 PBX, which is too bad still, because this phone is one of the only Nortel digital phones that I can find that has a separate mute button, that yellow mute button. All the Meridian 1 phones and all the Norstar phones, they have mute as part of the hands-free button. So you press hands-free once and it enables hands-free. And for as long as you're in hands-free and the handset's hung up, pressing hands-free again will just toggle mute on and off. Which stinks because if you're using the handset, you can't mute the handset microphone. Pressing hands-free will just turn the hands-free speaker on. So you can't mute the handset of the phone, which is too bad. You can on this phone. And I don't know why Nortel never made Meridian 1 or Norstar phones with a separate mute button. They even made hardly any analog phones with a separate mute button. The phone I do use in my cubicle is a Nortel Vista 480E, and that does have a separate mute button. The only other phone I can think of that has a separate mute button is the Vista 390. So it's very strange that Nortel never integrated a separate mute button like they did on the Centrex phone, because I think it's a really great feature. So it's too bad they never did that. So oh well. So really, that was one of the biggest differences really between this phone and all the other phones. So really, from a usability standpoint, there's not too much difference between the Meridian 1 and the Norstar phones. They have similar functionality. The Meridian 1 phones have larger displays, so they can display more information, just because, the Meridian 1 is ultimately a more complex system. But other than that, there's not much difference between how they work. So I got to reading about the Norstar systems, and as it turns out, I'm actually more inclined now to acquire and experiment with a Norstar system than a Meridian 1 system. Now that I've been looking at and reading about the Norstar phones, I actually like the look of the Norstar phones more than the Meridian 1 phones. I like the integrated display, and I think overall they just look quite a bit nicer, a bit cleaner design. And I think it's very nice. And as it turns out, the Norstar phones actually have a couple of neat features that the Meridian 1 phones don't have. The Meridian Norstar phones have a page feature. I mentioned in the description of the Centrex phone video. If you're ever in a grocery store or another retail store and you hear this really sharp, bright DTMF tone over the loudspeakers preceded by a page, that's a Norstar system at work. So the Norstars can page, the Meridian 1 phones can't, because they were of course meant purely for office use. There's no use for paging in an office. And there's a couple other features that the Norstar phones have that the Meridian 1 phones don't have. So combine this with the fact that the look of the Norstar phones has really grown on me. I think I'd like to actually play around with a Norstar system rather than a Meridian 1 system. But here's probably the biggest reason why I'd rather try out a Norstar system than a Meridian 1 system. The Meridian 1 systems are, of course, meant for much larger installations than a Norstar system. As a result, the Meridian 1 PBXs that were made are physically much larger than Norstar PBXs. They were all modular, so they're much more complex to figure out. A lot of the Norstar PBXs were integrated, just standalone systems that you don't need to go inside to add feature cards to or anything. But the Meridian 1 PBXs are large, they're modular, they were meant to be opened up and have cards installed, cards that would enable things like adding more phones or adding more outside lines. And the Meridian 1 PBXs are just overall very, very complex. In addition, a Norstar PBX can be completely programmed using a Norstar phone. You don't need to connect a computer or anything to a Norstar PBX. It can be everything can be configured directly from the phone. With a Meridian 1 PBX, you need to actually connect a computer to the PBX via a serial connection and then use a terminal program to type stuff to the PBX through a terminal. And I've looked at a couple of videos on YouTube, and it's some really cryptic command line stuff you gotta know to configure a Meridian 1 PBX. With the Norstar, it's straight from the phone, and it's menu based. You have menu options appear on the display, and everything can be configured using a phone on a Norstar system. It's so simple and easy and nice. So I would much rather deal with that than try to learn how to configure a Meridian 1 system. Here's one of the smallest Meridian 1 PBXs you'll find. It's Northern Telecom Meridian 1 option 11. And if you read the description of the Centrex phone video, I actually put a link to a video on YouTube, an original Nortel Meridian 1 option 11. I don't know if you'd call it an infomercial. It was basically it was like a 10-15 minute informational video about the Meridian 1 system, because it was made at the time it was new, so it described all the features and merits of a Meridian 1 system over an old-fashioned business telephone system. And so anyway, yes, and it was one of the smaller systems, the option 11. And this is actually quite large. It's hard to tell from the picture, but an option 11 cabinet, I think it's like 2.5 feet in this direction, like 3 feet in this direction, and it's a foot deep. And it was meant to hang on a wall, and if you watch the Nortel video advertising the option 11, you can, they show a clip of someone installing one, hanging one on a wall, so you can see how large it is compared to a human. And yeah, they're quite large, quite unwieldy. This front panel removes, and there's a bunch of slots to add option cards, because a bare bones option 11 system can't do much at all. In fact, I think on eBay sometimes, if you look at some option 11 systems on eBay, there's actually nothing inside them at all. It's just an empty cabinet with slots, so they're actually completely non-functional until you add slots to them. So yeah, it's just really unwieldy, not suitable for hobby use. So I think that's the biggest reason I'd never consider toying around with a Meridian 1 system. They were meant for really large installations. The PBXs are really complex, and they're expensive to acquire. Not the cabinet itself, but because any other equipment you'd need to make it functional, the cost would really add up. On the contrary, here's one of the largest Norstar PBXs you'll find. This is the Meridian Norstar MICS, or MIX, stands for Modular Integrated Communication System. And It's quite a bit slimmer than the option 11. I think it's about as tall, and I don't think it's nearly as deep either. So this is the largest and most complex Norstar PBX you'll find. It was modular. You could buy extra cabinets that attach to the sides that, to add, more lines or capability for more lines or more phones, or to be able to add analog phones to the system, POTS phones. So, that's pretty much as complex as you'll get. Still a bit complex. We can do better if you're doing this just for a hobby reason. Here's the Northern Telecom Norstar CICS, CICS. It stands for Compact Integrated Communication System. This is what retrochad has. These are quite small. It's about the width and height of a mini tower desktop computer, but it's only a few inches deep. So these are quite small, and if you watch retrochad's video, you can see just how small it is. I mean, it's only like that tall, and you could probably pick it up with one hand. You could not pick up an option 11 with one hand. I actually found some specifications, and an empty option 11 cabinet weighs 23 pounds. A full one weighs 70 pounds. This one would be much less. So yeah, the CICS, CICS, that's an even better solution. The CICS does have a couple of slots you can see right here to add option cards, but we can get even simpler than that. And this is a Northern Telecom Meridian Norstar 3x8, written 3x8. This was the smallest and simplest Norstar PBX that Northern Telecom made. It's called the 3x8 because it can handle 3 outside lines and control 8 Norstar phones. It is not modular, it's not expandable in any way. It is what you see is what you get. It's quite small. This one here is pictured beside its power supply, and the power supply is only like that big, about the size of a large laptop power brick, because the power supply has to power the phones as well. The phones are completely powered by the line they're connected to. And yeah, you can see how small it is. I'd say that's about the width and length of a large laptop, and it's only a couple of inches deep. So totally cool. That'd be probably the best way to go if you want to, try a small Northern Telecom PBX, because it doesn't come much smaller and simpler than this. Non-expandable, non-modular. It's 3 outside lines, 8 phones. You're guaranteed that, so that would be a pretty good system. Here's another good candidate for PBX. This is a Norstar 6x16. Basically a big brother to the 3x8. It handles 6 outside lines, 16 phones. It appears to me to be a bit longer than a 3x8, but I would assume the other dimensions are the same based on pictures. And yeah, this would be another good candidate. It's not modular, it's not expandable. Don't have to worry about buying one and it not being fully functional, because it has all that functionality, because it's all self-contained. The next subject I'm going to touch on is one of what I call red tape. In the beginning, I found this out early on when I started researching this stuff, and it really discouraged me when I learned it, and I thought it would make it impossible for me to ever have my own Norstar system. What you're looking at right here is another PBX. It's a Northern Telecom Business Communication Manager. This was the successor to the classic Norstar PBXs, the Business Communication Manager, or BCM. It was a family of PBXs, and this is the smallest member, called the BCM 50. And these were basically next-gen PBXs that replaced the classic Norstar PBXs, which are all the ones that I've just showed you. The BCM added IP telephony functionality. So in addition to the classic Norstar phones, you can also interface IP phones with this PBX. And it also had a lot more functionality built into it. It had built-in functionality to handle, the BCM50 can handle, I believe, 12 digital phones, 4 analog phones, and 4 outside lines, if I'm remembering correctly. And that's without any expansion, which is pretty sweet. In addition, the BCM is configurable using a PC running Windows through a graphical user interface. You connect a computer to this thing through Ethernet, and you actually run a Windows program that has a GUI interface to configure everything, which is really great. So in the beginning, I was actually looking at one of these rather than the classic Norstar PBXs, because at the time, first of all, I assumed incorrectly that the Norstar PBXs were like the Meridian 1 PBXs, that you had to connect them through a serial connection to a computer and run a terminal program and know lots of cryptic commands and that stuff. Well, no, that's wrong. Like I said, the Norstar PBXs, completely configurable through a menu-based interface through a Norstar phone, which is nice. But I didn't know that, so I was looking at one of these because it's a graphical user interface through Ethernet on a computer, which is great. So, and I looked on eBay, and eBay has quite a few of these, and for not too bad prices. Because even these are, as new as these came out in the mid-2000s. These are end of life now. Avaya, the company that bought Northern Telecom's Norstar phones and PBXs and all that stuff, they continued making these. But as of last year, the business communication manager is no longer supported. Avaya has moved on to their own proprietary IP telephony products. They do not support any Norstar or any Meridian 1 products anymore. A lot of businesses are upgrading to other systems, getting rid of their Nortel stuff, and there's quite a few of these on eBay. So I thought, oh great, you know, a modern PBX, and it's small and it's configurable through a GUI, and it can still handle the classic Norstar phones, and that's great. Well, then I learned about what I call red tape. It turns out that all the BCM PBXs, and apparently this is how other companies sell their PBXs as well, you don't get full functionality out of the box. When you bought one of these, you told Nortel like how many phones you wanted to have and how many outside lines you wanted to have, and Nortel would ship you the unit configured only with that functionality, no more, no less, and you paid accordingly for it. If you had only like 1 outside line and 4 phones, you told Nortel that they would ship you one of these configured for 1 outside line and 4 phones, and you'd pay a cheaper price than someone who ordered one of these for 4 outside lines and 12 phones. Well, the problem with this is if you wanted to add or remove features, you had to contact Nortel, give them like a unique ID, I guess like a serial number, and they would ship you a product key that you would enter into the unit to enable the new features that you wanted. So the problem with this is you might buy one of these on eBay, and it turns out that it doesn't have the functionality you want to add. Well, Northern Telecom's long out of business. Avaya doesn't support these anymore. Actually, I think it's this year, like in the next couple of months, Avaya is going to be discontinuing this feature buying service. So you won't be able to buy new features for your BCM if you're still using one. So if I were to buy one of these on eBay and it wasn't configured the way that I was hoping for, so I could, you know, do everything with it I wanted to do, there would be no way for me to enable that functionality. Now there is an asterisk to that. There's a few people, there's an online forum that I did some reading on, and ultimately I made an account so I could ask this sort of stuff. And there were a few people on this forum who have figured out how to basically crack one of these and enable all the functionality. And I spoke with one of them. He offers BCM cracking. Well, it's not really cracking, but he doesn't like hack into it. He just somehow is able to have all the product keys to enable all the features. I spoke with one guy, and he actually does this as a service. You send your BCM to him, or I don't know if you even have to send it to him. You might just have to give him the serial number, and he gives you whatever your keys you need to enable all the features, and he does this for a few $100. So that's great. If I got a BCM, I could have all the functionality enabled if I needed it, but it would cost me a lot of money. That's the only thing. Another big problem, perhaps an even bigger problem with a BCM, these have mechanical hard drives in them that store all the configuration data. These used Maxtor slimline hard drives, and a PBX runs 24/7. Yeah, literally every BCM ever made has had the hard drive fail. Maxtor slimline hard drives, I've had great luck with them, but no one else has. For everyone else, they're quite unreliable hard drives, and you put them in 24/7 service and they fail in a couple of years. So yeah, most if not all BCMs you'll find on eBay, they'll very likely have a failed hard drive. That's a huge problem because the hard drive actually also stores the operating system that these require to function. These are very much a computer in and of themselves. And yeah, if you get a BCM with a failed hard drive, you are screwed because it's impossible to get the operating system. You can put a new hard drive in it, no problem. It's a standard SATA 1 hard drive, but it's impossible to get a disk image of the operating system so you can image it onto the hard drive. If you're a business, you can go to Avea's website and download an ISO image, no problem. If you're someone like you or I, impossible. You need to be a business to be able to access Avea's service that allows you to download an ISO. So the guy I mentioned who offers the feature enabling as a service, he has all the images as well, and that's included in the services he does. The BCM actually went through several software revisions, and part of his service is even if your BCM's currently functional, has a good hard drive and good operating system on it, he'll image the hard drive with the latest version of the operating system. So even if you get one with a failed hard drive, you're not screwed. It's a bit of cash to do it, but you can get one fully functional, which is nice. So when I learned about this and learned about the possible costs if I got one that wasn't fully functional, it's like, oh, maybe I can't do this. I'll have to wait until, I'm rich and famous someday to have enough money to do that. Well, that's when I learned about the old classic Norstar PBXs that they don't have hard drives. It's all stored on a PCMCIA flash memory card, and there's no red tape like that on the larger classic Norstar PBXs, like the Mix and the CICS. And I was surprised. I didn't think the where's the picture? I didn't think the CICS would have this, but it does. They do have a little bit of red tape. Just an example, a 6 with a bare bones 6 is can only handle, I think, 8 telephones, and back in the day you'd have to buy a product like a license key from Northern Telecom in order to enable the full 24 phone or 32 phone, whatever it was, capacity. So the Mix and the 6, and I do believe the 6x16 even do have a bit of red tape. From what I've read, the 6x16 in its restricted form, it basically functions as a 4x8, 4 outside lines, 8 phones, and that's actually still fine. I'd be perfectly happy with that. But just an FYI. But I do believe the 3x8 has no red tape just because it's already such a small and limited PBX. When you buy a 3x8, it's as is. There's no having to enable extra functionality. It all comes as it is. I was accidentally showing a picture of a 6x16. Here's a 3x8. So TLDR, I think in the end, I'm going to try, if I actually follow through with this, which right now I really want to, I'm going to try to get a hold of either a 3x8 or a 6x16, or possibly a 6. The 6 is going to be a bit tricky because it has a bit more red tape, and of course it has the expansion slot, so unless someone selling one actually knows how it's configured, you're not really sure what you're going to get. But yeah, I think primarily I'm going to be looking at a 3x8 or a 6x16. Well, I'll still keep a BCM in mind, but the BCM would be way too expensive to make functional, at least for me right now. So I'm going to be looking at one of the small classic PBXs. Actually, thinking about it now, I might be more inclined to get a 6x16 than a 3x8, because the 6x16 has a built-in power supply, whereas the 3x8 requires an external power brick which connects to the 3x8. It's very common to find 3x8s on eBay, I've found, that do not come with the power supply, and the power supply is quite expensive. The cheapest price I've found for one on the internet is like $60. But the 6x16 has a built-in power supply. In addition, I've seen more 6x16s on eBay than 3x8s, so they're easier to find. So here's what everyone's wondering: what the heck is this going to cost if I follow through with this? Well, I've pulled a few examples from eBay. Let's take a look. Here's a 6x16, and it comes with 7 Norstar phones. How nice is that? Price? $75, and about $50 shipping to Canada. I'd never try to get something like this shipped to the US because I'd be scared that if they knew what it was, they'd think I'd be trying to open a business in Canada and try to open a business illegally without registering it and all that sort of stuff. Nope. Just get it straight shipped to Canada. Luckily, of course, Nortel was a Canadian company, so I think the bulk of what they made was sold and installed in Canada. So there's a lot on the Canadian eBay, which is where I am right now. So a 6x16 with 7 phones, and one of them is the fancier Norstar M7310 phone that has the extra function buttons up here. $75 and about $50 shipping to Canada. Well, actually, it's only $33 shipping to Canada, and then eBay's got the stupid import charges, $23 here, so $56. 75 plus 56 minus 25, so that's what, $131 total. That's not bad. That's a Christmas budget. That would fit in a Christmas budget for me. Heck, I could do this totally. I could buy I could buy it right now. I have the cash, but it wouldn't be a smart purchase. I buy enough stuff I don't need as it is. My voice is starting to go hoarse. I can tell this video has gone on way too long. What's it say here? Nortel Meridian telephone cabinet with yada yada software package. This includes 1 7310, 6 7208 phones. These items were just removed while working from a customer site. So if that's true, then the PBX is probably working perfectly. So yeah, that's a totally doable price on a Christmas budget. Totally awesome. What about this one? This is a 6x16. Ooh, $30 Canadian. That's not American. That's $30 Canadian. So like just a little over $20 American. Shipping's $46 Canadian. So that's what, like $35 American. So like $55 American. Yeah, it's in good shape. What's it say? Some scratches and marks, fully working. Wow, what a price. I'd be even more tempted to buy this now, but again, it's wouldn't really be smart to put the money out right now. But yeah, that's a really good price. Moving right along, here's the 3x8, and not a good price, unfortunately, $200 American. But it is refurbished, and it does come with the power supply. It says, for sale, Nortel Norstar 3x8. It says, tested, defaulted, meaning they've restored it to the factory configuration. Battery holds programming. New power supply. Oh. So, this is probably the best chance of getting a fully working, good shape unit on eBay, but you'll pay extra for it. Yeah, regarding that, that was another piece of red tape for the BCM, is actually resetting them, erasing any custom programming on them, and resetting them to the factory configuration so that you could reprogram it the way you want. Because when you reset a BCM, you lose the license keys, which is really dumb. So if you get a BCM off eBay and it has a bunch of programming on it, and you want to just start off fresh, you're gonna have the keys on hand to re-enable whatever features it had. And the keys aren't something that's normally kept on hand. You have to request them from Nortel or Avaya, but Nortel doesn't exist anymore, and Avaya's not gonna support these for much longer. So still, the only way to go about that is to get it cracked by someone who knows how to do it. It's not really cracked. But the classic Norstar PBXs are nice because the programming on them is kept alive by a battery. In fact, I read somewhere that some of them don't even have a battery. They just have a capacitor that holds the configuration for a couple of days after power is lost. So all you got to do to reset a classic Norstar PBX is just remove the battery or short out the capacitor if power hasn't already been lost and the configuration erased. And then when you power it back on, it's just like it came from the factory, and you don't have to re-enable any features. Although I'm not sure, like I said, the 6x16 and the 6 do have that functionality that lets Nortel restrict some features. I don't know if any enabled features will be lost when you remove power or not. But at least with those, even in a restricted configuration, is still fine for the purposes that I want to do. So yeah, a bit of money, but you get a fully tested PBX with a power supply, which is good. That's just the picture. How about phones themselves? Well, here's an M7208, standard Norstar phone. $12.50 American, $23 shipping direct to Canada. I think the phones I'd be comfortable having shipped to the US if it made it a lot cheaper. So this guy's got a lot of them for sale. So yeah, like $20-30 shipped is about what you'll get a phone for. Here's a larger M7324 phone, one of the largest Norstar phones. It's got 4 sets of feature buttons on it. The larger Norstar phones also have these 3 buttons under the display. So this 7324, $20 US, and with the stupid import charges, $18 shipped to Canada. So $38 total. So yeah, the phones ain't cheap. Although you might be able to find them cheaper. I just brought up the first couple of eBay listings I could find. But overall, not bad. Just having 2 phones would be enough to satisfy me to begin with, you know, just to test, you know, one phone calling to another and test paging, you know, the sort of stuff that retrochad demonstrated in his video, which I'd recommend you watch if you're interested at all. And that's about it. So this video is going on way too long. It's very much mostly me rambling about stuff that who knows how few people care about. But I just thought I would share my thoughts regarding what's become very much a new interest of mine, as these things often happen. And once these new interests happen, I get very absorbed into them and have almost a one-track mind about them. But that's what I'd like to do. I'm thinking maybe around Christmas time. If I can get a PBX and a couple of phones for Christmas, that would be totally awesome. And if I can do that, I would make a series of videos, you know, detailing what nobody has detailed in a YouTube video about these phones, such as how to initialize a PBX and how to program them from the phones and what you need to know, you know, like Norstar for Dummies, you know, how to wire the phones up and stuff like that. And I think that'd be kind of cool, and I'd be really interested to learn this stuff for myself. So that's my thoughts right now. That's all the information I have to share. You know, I'll definitely let you guys know if in the future I actually make a purchase regarding this. So if you made it this far, thanks for watching and listening, and I'll see you later.